When I first met the other guys in the band, it was at El Camino High School. We all went to the same high school.
Well, there was a great friend of mine named Tom Clement who was also an outcast. He was one of the key figures in the evolution of Bad Religion because he was a very good friend with Brett Gurwitz.
He introduced me to Jay and Greg. He said, hey, you guys should be in a band together, because I played guitar and Greg sang, supposedly. We hadn't heard him yet.
Brett and I met the first time when Brett borrowed his dad's station wagon to go to a Ramones concert. He drove us to the Hollywood Palladium, and he asked me, dude, are you ready for a nonstop bop? And I said, you're goddamn right. And then I guess history was made.
I met Greg Graffin actually in junior high school. I didn't really become friends with him until we were at El Camino High School. We both showed up one day with spiky black hair, and he had a shirt that said Black Flag, and I had a shirt that said Virgin.
What we had in common was that they were the only punk rockers in the school.
So we kind of just stuck to each other like Velcro and said, yeah, I think we've got to stick together because we're going to get killed.
Jay didn't play anything, but it was pretty much agreed that we could teach him bass. We were from the Valley. And you know, if you were from OC, it was kind of cool. If you were from Hollywood, it was cool. But if you were from the Valley, it was like, you know, oh, you're from the Valley.
I was such a nerd that I didn't even draw a distinction between Hollywood and the San Fernando Valley, because I saw the cool people in the Valley, the surfers and the skaters, and I couldn't even distinguish that they were seen as geeks because they lived in the Valley by the people who were living in Marina del Rey. To me, they were all the same, and I was not part of that. I was just seen as a nerd. To be a band from the Valley was second-tier status to the bands in Hollywood.
I remember that Keith Morris from the Circle Jerks one time introduced us as a really good new band from the Valley. You know, that was his disclaimer.
Right. We did start to build up a following, mostly because Jay and I hung out so much in Hollywood that we did start to get a Hollywood following very early on. By 1981, a lot of our best friends were just punks from Hollywood, and they started coming to our shows, legitimizing our fan base as being, you know, Hollywood-based.
The first time we ever rehearsed was in our original drummer Jay Ziskraut's mom's living room, because we were all in high school at this time.
We would bounce around from house to house until whosever parents got tired of us being there.
Jay wasn't in the band yet. Greg was 15, and me and Ziskraut were 17. We didn't have a bass player yet. And I brought this song called Sensory Overload, and Greg brought a song called World War III, which ended up being on the EP. And we learned them and played them. And it's been basically, that's been the paradigm until today.
How we decided on the name Bad Religion.
We didn't go very long without a name. I think, you know, we had a few rehearsals.
Well, there were really like 6 or 7 others, and they were so horrifyingly bad. I'm glad we didn't choose them.
Head cheese, that got thrown out.
They were absolutely disgusting. I won't even repeat them.
If you're going to call it head cheese, you might as well call it smegma. That's even more punk.
A big new thing that was happening was televangelists. Jerry Falwell was just coming into prominence. Another guy, Swaggart, was coming into prominence at that time.
Well, then we rambled on about a whole series of names that started with bad.
Bad family planning.
Bad family life.
I can't tell you why this made a negative impression on us, or a strong negative impression on us when we were just, you know, young teenagers. Maybe it's because Greg and I are both science geeks. But we just thought these guys were complete jerks. We kind of considered ourselves to be progressives when we were even at such a young age. And we understood implicitly that morality is not something that in a free society is forced upon somebody.
Someone said it and it kind of came and went, but it kept coming back.
We named our band Bad Religion after this kind of incipient movement of evangelical Christians who had ministries on television, basically saying, you know, fuck off Jerry Falwell.
We all nodded our head in agreement. Yeah, that's a good name. Fuck religion.
On one level, it's vindicating that we named our band that, but it's also really kind of frightening to look at the implications.
It literally was just two words put together that came to a meaning much later.
And now here we are, 20-something years later, and it turns out that the thing we were railing against as little baby kids was the seeds of this conservative right-wing groundswell that ended up in preemptive war and George Bush being reelected behind an illegal war on foreign soil.
It felt like it was offensive enough to mean something, and that worked. This is really going to piss our parents off.
It means as much or more to me today than it did when we named the group. The first gig was, I don't know who threw it, some kid threw a party in his dad's warehouse, and it was us and Social Distortion. And we only had 5 songs ever written. A couple of them didn't even make the EP, actually, so that was prior to that, really early stuff. We played our 5 or 6 songs.
One of the first shows he did was out in the valley at the Country Club in Reseda.
We used to follow him to Godzilla's, the warehouses, all kinds of places.
I remember my buddy Tom came up to me and said, "Hey man, you guys are really good. Just don't break up and you'll get popular." So that's actually the advice I give to younger bands nowadays, because that was good advice. Back then, if you were a punk band, you had to have a logo. So Black Flag, to me, has the best punk logo ever. And the Circle Jerks had the Skanker Man, and everyone has a cool logo. So we needed to have a logo. So I went in my art room and I drew up the Bad Religion logo and I took it to practice.
And Brett came in with this piece of paper with that crossbuster thing on it and said, "Look at this." And we kind of all laughed and then said, "Yeah, that's easy to spray paint on a wall and unbelievably offensive. Cool. Let's just run with that."
People think there's so much hatred in our logo. Well, I don't know why people would jump to that conclusion.
It wasn't meant to be against Christians.
I know plenty of religious Christians who are not offended at all by it.
Bad Religion is in no way anti-Christ. Christ was probably the most progressive liberal in history.
When you see that crossbuster at my house, it just means Christianity is not practiced here.
He was there to talk about, hey man, this is, it's all about forgiveness, and it's all about the meek and the poor and the infirm and loving them and loving each other. And, Christ's revolution was forgiveness.
First of all, what is that slash? Well, it's the international symbol for no or disallowed.
Bad Religion logo is just meant to say we detest religion. It's not meant to be anti-Christian at all.
It's not a hateful thing at all. It just means look elsewhere.
It didn't have some kind of intent. It was just offensive and cool.
To me, it does have meaning. That symbol does have meaning, and I think it's a good logo.